So how do you set up Remote Play on the PlayStation 4? Well, first, let's talk about what Remote Play is. Remote Play is the ability to control and play games on the PS4 using your PlayStation Vita, and the PlayStation Vita is the handheld PlayStation console. So setting it up is actually very simple. Once you have your PlayStation 4 up, you're going to need your Vita next to you. You're going to want them both to be connected to one Wi-Fi, and you're going to go over to Settings right here, and you're going to scroll all the way down to PlayStation Vita connection settings. And you're going to want to make sure Enable Remote Play is checked. You're going to want to check Connect Directly with the PS Vita, and then you're going to want to go to Add Device. And sort of like pairing any sort of Bluetooth device with a computer, it's going to give you this 8-digit code. And then the next step of the process is going to be here on the Vita. So let me pull up the Vita, and using the latest software updates, it's going to come with something called PS4 Link. And when you hit that, it's going to ask you for the first time for that 8-digit code. And you're just going to put it in, and then you'll be all set. Once you have it set up and you launch the Remote Play, it's going to ask you whether you want it to be Remote Play or second screen. Now, the difference between this is that Remote Play mirrors everything going on with the PlayStation 4 onto the Vita. So it's essentially like playing your PS4 on a Vita. Second screen is referring to what some games might implement. And what that means is while you're playing the game on the PS4 with your controller, you can use the Vita as a second screen to do additional things. For instance, with the Playroom, you can create little objects and throw it to your AR bots using the Vita. So that's sort of the two different ways that the Vita plays into the PS4. But for Remote Play, you're just going to hit Remote Play. It's going to want to connect. Now, the cool thing is, it's going to first try and connect directly with the PlayStation, which means you're going to want to be nearby it. The second thing it's going to try to do is connect to the PlayStation through your Wi-Fi, so through a local network. And then the next thing it's going to do beyond that, if it doesn't find it, is it's going to go onto the internet. It's going to try and find it as long as your PlayStation's configured so that it's on the internet and it's in standby mode. It'll find it through there, and then you'll be playing through the internet. Now, an important thing to note there is that you're going to want to be on Wi-Fi, you're going to want a good connection, because you are streaming a video game, so a little bit of latency does make a difference depending on the game you're playing. But in this scenario, we're playing within a local network, and in fact, this is probably connected through direct connection, so there should be no latency problems. Now, as you can see, it's actually pulled up the connection settings that I had on screen before. So I am, for all intents and purposes, in the PS4. I can actually back out, and as you can see, I'm navigating through the PS4 like anything else. And I can open a game and I can play a game. Now, one thing you're going to want to be considerate of is that the controller mapping between the Vita and the DualShock 4 is slightly different. So you've got some of the basics. You've got the dual sticks. You've got the PlayStation button, which acts as the PlayStation button on the DualShock. You've got your start and select here, which act as your share and your options button. And you've got your 4 face buttons. So you've got your 2 shoulder buttons here, which map to the shoulder buttons of the DualShock 4. Now, what's missing from the Vita are the 2 trigger buttons. They don't have triggers, but what it does have is a rear touchpad. And so what happens in most cases, if a game uses it, is that it's going to map the 2 triggers to the rear touch on the left or the right side. And to that extent, the touchpad on the DualShock 4 on the front is mapped to the touchscreen of the Vita. And then the last control that you need to think about is the R3 and L3. Now, with the DualShock, you have your 2 analog sticks, and you could click down on them, and that's what's known as L3 and R3, whichever stick it is. These don't click down, they're just analog sticks that move around. So to simulate the clicking in the R3 and L3, it's usually mapped to these little corners here. So if this video itself hasn't been evidence enough, sometimes mapping a PlayStation 4 game to the Vita can be complicated. It can be not as intuitive as you'd want it to be. So really, how you use Remote Play is going to depend a lot on what game you're playing. A game like this, Resogun, is actually pretty simple, only uses a few buttons. So this will actually be a really easy thing to do. And then the last thing I would like to talk about when it comes to Remote Play that I think is a really cool feature is that you can use Remote Play to wake up your PlayStation 4 and put it to sleep. So in theory, if you want to use this to play a PlayStation 4 that's on the other side of the house and it's in standby mode, you don't have to go turn it on to get into Remote Play. You can actually turn it on through here. The app will look for the PlayStation, it'll find it, it'll turn it on, and then at the very end, it'll turn it off. And when you click the PlayStation button here, it'll bring up this little menu and ask you if you are pushing the PlayStation button on the PS4 or whether you're pushing the PlayStation button for the Vita. So I could either go into the menu of the PlayStation 4 or I could go into the menu of the Vita itself and back out and go and play my Vita games. So that's just a quick look at how you can set up Remote Play and use Remote Play with your PlayStation 4 and your PS Vita.